It's really important, especially with the emergency preparedness training that we need to have. We need to do some kind of training, and I've asked Mr. Craig Evans to come, and I'm going to let him introduce what he does for a living. He does this for a living, so he is an authority on emergency preparedness, especially on a larger scale, more than just the troops. So, Mr. Evans, thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, guys.
Hi.
Good morning. So I just said, I find it difficult sometimes to talk about myself, and you don't want to hear a whole lot about myself, but whenever I stand up in front of a group, I try to give a little bit of background. That way you guys know who's talking to you, what kind of background they have. Basically, I spent 4 years in the Navy back in the 70s. I was on the damage control party, which basically that means the group that when they blow a hole in the ship, you go to the area that's got a hole in it, you try to plug it. So I spent 4 years there in the 70s, which kind of dates me a little bit. When I got out of the Navy, I was hired by the Urbana Fire Division. I spent 25 years there. I was hired as a captain and a training officer. I've seen a lot of emergencies in my lifetime. I'm not going to get into a whole lot of the details because you never know who you're talking to. I mean, some of the runs I might have had, may have been a relative or even something like that if you're from Champaign, Logan County. I understand some of you guys are. But I've had everything from, the boyfriend cutting the girlfriend's throat to hanging, shooting. I've had a guy that was holding his arm from where he got tore off in a car wreck because he got his arm hanging up and hit a fence. All bad days. The thing they had in common, nobody left the house that day thinking they were going to be involved in something like that. That's what kind of makes my job interesting. They're all different. It's a different day all the time. And the one common thread, I believe, is no one walks out the front door in the morning expecting something like that to happen to them. But it does happen. When I retired from the fire department, because of my background, I guess, they scooped me up for the county. I've spent the last 5 years as Champaign County's Director of Emergency Management, Homeland Security. So I kind of have two jobs, if you will. A lot of people laugh about the Homeland Security part. It's like, what kind of things, what kind of terrorist activities, what kind of things are we going to have in Champaign County? I can tell you that we do have, a militia in Champaign County that they track. I can tell you that my biggest fear is not Champaign County itself, what might happen in there. Of course, everybody's concerned about the schools and the problems we have in schools, which is probably the biggest threat. But where we do our planning is kind of regionally, and of course Urbana sets our Champaign County, Logan, all those set pretty much geographically between Columbus and Dayton. And there are targets there that are places that can be targeted, activities that can be targeted, which would mean if there's a big evacuation in those areas, a lot of them would come to us. So that's where a lot of our planning revolves around. With Homeland Security, you do get a little bit of information that you're not allowed to share, for instance. But I do have actually a secret I can share. Within the next 10 to 15 years, the country will be taken over. I don't know if you're aware of that or not. Within the next 10 to 15 years. Does anybody want to take a wild guess at who's taking it over? That's a guess. I'm not going to rule anything out, but I just can guarantee.
Walmart.
Terrorist.
How about you? Basically, the youth of today, and that's kind of what I wanted to really make a point with you on. 10 to 15 years from now, you guys are taking over. And that's why I really appreciate the fact of coming in here and talking to you a little bit, because you're going to take care of me when I get older. I mean, you look at me right now and say, well, you are old. Right? Well, I'm going to get older. I'm going to be that guy, in the nursing home, stuff like that. You're going to be the guys, hopefully, up here doing what I do. The different areas, 10 to 15 years, most of you guys got to be at least 15 at this point. So you're looking at, 30 years old. That's old, right? You will be in charge of this country at that point. And that's why I do appreciate the invitation to come here and talk to you a little bit, because I think you are the future. You are going to be taking over, whether you like it or not. So the more I can help prepare you, the better off we're all going to be, I think. So I guess what I'd like to do is Archer asked me to talk specifically about some preparedness for your trip that's coming up, the Jamboree. So I just made some notes, and I don't do a lot of this, so I'm just going to refer to my notes if you don't mind. I put that you need to be prepared. You probably heard it. Physically, mentally, spiritually. If you're prepared in that way, individually, then you're going to be in a better position to react to an emergency situation. I cannot stress training enough. That's what I did. That's what I did as an officer in the fire department. I'm a firm believer in drilling and training, because then when something happens, you don't really think. It's just automatic. You just do it. You need to make sure when you're at camp, of course, stay hydrated at all times. Most of you guys know, your body can do without water only about 3 days at the most. You can go without food a lot longer than that. It's no good to wait until you're actually thirsty. You need to stay hydrated when you're physically active, because what happens if that water supply is cut off and you find out when you're already thirsty? Okay, you're already behind the 8 ball at that point. So I would really push. I think you're going to be in there in July, right? Mm-hmm. So you're looking at a time where you need to stay well hydrated. And again, a lot of the things I'm going to share with you, I hope you will kind of practice some of it. That's where the training will come in. I talked to Archer earlier. One of the next notes I have is you really need to make sure you have a buddy, at least groups of 2 or 3, so that you can kind of keep an eye on each other, help each other out. Medical emergencies are something that's a real concern for me, because I've seen a lot of them. And if your sugar drops out on you, something like that, you might not even be aware of it, but your buddy will. He'll notice different things about you, maybe some slurred speech or something like that. It's real important. Plus, when you go someplace, whether it's a restroom or whatever, you want to think it's a safe environment, but you got a travel route back and forth. And I'll tell you, there's some strange people that hang out at the roadside rests and the stops and places like that. And they target you guys, or they target anybody by out-of-state plates and things like that. They know you're not familiar with the area. And unfortunately, I'll just share, it's just a grim reality thing. There are predators out there that key on those things. Be a hard target. Be in a group. Be in at least pairs. Don't be alone. Because that's a soft target. And that's the kind of people that these predators do try to target. You should kind of pre-plan your gathering places along the route, back and forth. Where are we going? It's a trip to Virginia, right? How far, how many stops are you going to make? What's in that area where we're stopping? The area hospitals, maybe, even, would be something that you want to kind of know about. Well, the 911 is pretty universal now, but is that going to be universal throughout your interstate travels or interstate travel? Is all the enhanced 911 systems there for you? Some areas like Champaign County is just now getting to what they call phase 2 compliance with 911, which means if you dial 911 on a cell phone, they can track it within 4 meters of knowing where that call comes from. But we're just getting there, okay? So you're going to be traveling in places where you hit 911, and it might go to a state highway patrol post 2 counties over if they don't have enhanced 911. So you need to be aware of those kind of things. Your travel routes, what are the emergency numbers for those areas that you're going to be stopping in. You should have, and I've already heard that that's getting done. I'm glad to hear that. My next note is you ought to make sure you designate some primary and secondary people as far as in-charge people, team leaders, troop leaders. You ought to have at least 1 or 2 people designated to be your main go-to people for first aid. How many of you guys got your first aid merit badge? Excellent. Most of okay, great. That's one of the things I was a merit badge counselor in. I think they still carry me on the books there for that and for this actually. You should have somebody that's going to be designated, 1 or 2 people,